Effect: red dust rose in clouds over the entrance to his property. Cause: someone was coming up the drive. Jake Sutton straightened from beneath the hood of the farm truck that was as old as he was and pulled off his gloves, stuffing the dusty leather into his back pocket. He knocked back his Stetson with one knuckle as he watched the compact hybrid rattle over the rutted red dirt drive. Bright October sunlight glared off the windshield. A car like that was not made for the farm track. Who in the world was that? He had lived in Redbud Trails his whole life, minus the 10 years he'd spent at university. Been back for the last 5. There were 583 families in Redbud Trails, and he didn't know a single one with a hybrid car. It wasn't practical on the bumpy farm roads around here. The drive ran alongside the house and gave easy access to both the front and back doors. The red car stopped in the shade of the 2-story farmhouse toward the back. The driver must have seen Jake by the barn. He walked over to say hello because his mom had preached good manners throughout his entire childhood. The engine shut off. When the driver stepped out, Jake felt like he'd had his breath knocked out of him. Stevie Flower. Her raven black hair was cut in a trendy, chin-length style, and her eyes he knew to be a shade of near-transparent blue, were hidden behind sunglasses that he supposed were stylish, but were so big they dwarfed her elfin features. The probability of a visit from Stevie Flower was so close to 0, it was immeasurable. And yet, here she was. Shouldn't she be in Nashville, recording a new album or planning a tour or something? "Hey," he said when the silence and her stare unnerved him. "Hi, Jake." She remembered his name. Her nose wrinkled, and one corner of her mouth ticked slightly upward. It hasn't been that long since high school. Not long enough. Had he spoken his first thought aloud? He couldn't control the shock that was tying up his tongue and causing the back of his neck to itch. At least the morning breeze cut beneath the brim of his Stetson and cooled him off a bit. Stevie was a country music artist, one of the hottest new voices getting airtime, though he knew she'd gone to Nashville over a decade ago to try and make a career for herself. He took in her trendy clothes, those stylish sunglasses, the car. Her presence still didn't compute. "How'd you find me out here?" He had bought this place 5 years ago, but when he'd been a kid, his family had lived in town. Her face turned slightly to one side, and the muscles in her cheek bunched and released. He was no good at reading facial expressions. Was she embarrassed, chagrined about what she was about to say? "I might have done a little bit of Facebook stalking." He felt his mouth unhinge. Each inhale and exhale puffed through his open lips, but he couldn't manage to close it. Stevie had been looking him up? Why? "I didn't know you'd be here today, though," she said. "Fall break." The long weekend away from his job as a physics professor was supposed to be relaxing. But while his colleagues would be working on making the next big breakthrough in their fields, he would be catching up on the farm work that had been piling up over these past weeks. More awkward silence, this time so quiet that he could hear the far-off leaves of the peach orchard rattling in the breeze. Then Stevie's lips twisted, and her chin lifted as she turned her face toward the barn. He pushed away the starstruck thoughts and really looked at the woman. And he finally registered the fine lines around her mouth and the tense set of her shoulders. She hadn't taken off her sunglasses. Was she hiding behind them? He took a step toward her. "Are you in trouble?" For one vain moment, Stevie Flower was glad she'd stopped at a gas station in Weatherford and reapplied her makeup. She was used to admiration from her fans and hangers-on, but the Jake she had known back in high school hadn't been one to pander. It made his admiration and embarrassment humbling. Although the man in front of her bore little resemblance to the Jake she remembered.